Okay, so welcome to our deep dive today. And today we were talking all about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and its relationship with the Federal Reserve and the U.S. dollar. Um, and to help us out with this, we actually have some excerpts from a text very creatively titled Pasted Text.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is really fascinating stuff. So let's just dive right in.
Yeah, let's get into it. So, I mean, one thing that really jumped out to me from this pasted text was this idea that Bitcoin has experienced quite a sharp decline in value, recently and particularly
Yeah.
over the past 24 hours.
Yeah, and it seems like it's really taken a tumble, and I'm really curious about how that all connects back to the Fed.
Yeah, so the text really seems to suggest that the Federal Reserve's policies are like a key driver in this decline. It's not just some random market fluctuation.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. But I guess I'm wondering, like, what specifically have they done?
Right.
Like, how
Yeah.
are their actions actually affecting the price of Bitcoin?
So basically, the Fed has a lot of control over monetary policy.
Right.
They control things like the money supply
Uh-huh.
and interest rates. And when the Fed tightens its monetary policy, which we've seen recently, they can actually strengthen the U.S. dollar.
Okay, so then a strong dollar means a weak Bitcoin. Is that how that works?
It's not quite a direct one-to-one relationship, I think. A better way to picture this is like a dance with a lot of different partners.
Right.
So when the dollar gets stronger,
Yeah.
measured by the
Hello.
DXY index, which tracks it against other major currencies, that can actually encourage investors to move some of their assets into dollar-denominated investments, and that shift in capital can then ripple out and affect Bitcoin's price.
Okay, yeah, so that's starting to make a little bit more sense now. But I guess I always thought that Bitcoin, being decentralized,
Yeah,
would be kind of immune to all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what does the Fed have to do with Bitcoin?
that's a really common misconception. And it makes sense, right? Because you think Bitcoin's this independent thing, operating outside the traditional financial system.
Right.
But in reality, it still exists within this broader financial ecosystem, right?
Mm.
So things like investor sentiment, global economic trends, even just speculation, can all impact its price. And what this pasted text suggests is that Bitcoin's price is actually really sensitive to changes in the U.S. dollar,
Okay.
particularly when those changes are driven by these big policy shifts from the Fed.
So I guess even though it's decentralized, it's not like completely isolated from powerful institutions like the
Yes.
Fed. So like, what does all this mean for like an average person listening to this? Like, they're maybe not heavily invested in crypto, but they're still trying to wrap their heads around these trends.
It really highlights just how interconnected global finance is, what the Fed does to try and stabilize the U.S. economy. It doesn't just stay within U.S. borders. These actions have ripple effects that reach all the way into the crypto market and potentially even impact things like your everyday expenses through inflation or changes in interest rate.
Wow, that is really making me rethink this whole idea of decentralized currency, like,
Right.
so what's the big takeaway here? And like, what are the questions we should be asking ourselves going forward?
I think the key takeaway here is that even though Bitcoin is decentralized, it's not immune to the influence of these centralized institutions. Like the Fed and, the pasted text really underscores that. And this raises a lot of questions about Bitcoin's inherent value
Yeah.
and its future. Does all this volatility suggest that it's not a stable store of value? Is this just like a bump in the road on its path to wider adoption?
Those are some really fascinating questions to think about. And I think for everyone listening out there, if the Fed can impact Bitcoin,
Mm.
what other events or decisions might have these unforeseen consequences for the crypto market?
Yeah,
We really have to start thinking about how everything's connected in ways we might not always expect.
exactly.